On this Sunday night, no talks, no trust, and no off-ramps. Conflicting rhetoric from the U.S. and Iran as the war enters week 3.
We don't see any reason why we should talk with Americans.
With a rising death toll among U.S. troops.
He was our only child,
And mounting destruction. The war's impact on your mortgage.
It's like a roller coaster.
Why rates will likely follow the price at the pumps. The New World Order. Prime Minister Carney's middle power push at the Canada-Nordic summit with a warning about Arctic security. And on this International Long COVID Awareness Day, how the nightmare for some continues.
There are people disabled enough that they aren't able to work.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. It has been called a waterway weapon of war, a day after U.S. President Donald Trump called on a number of nations to help make the Strait of Hormuz safe again. U.K. Prime Minister Keir Starmer spoke to him about the need to reopen the vital shipping route. And there are reports tonight the Trump administration is set to announce a coalition has been formed to escort ships through the strait. Starmer says he also spoke with Prime Minister Mark Carney today about the impact of the continued closure, something they'll discuss further at a meeting tomorrow after Carney arrived in London today. As the war enters its 3rd week, civilians continue to pay the price, shattering the lives of those in the Persian Gulf region and increasingly family members of fallen American troops. Candice Cole has more on a now seemingly endless conflict and the confusing messaging coming from the White House.
We never asked for a ceasefire.
Iran's foreign minister appearing on Face the Nation Sunday, refuting claims U.S. President Donald Trump made suggesting the Islamic Republic is ready to make a deal to end the 16-day war. Saturday, Trump told reporters he's not ready to make a deal because he wants better terms. But the Iranians say no such deal was ever on the table.
And we have never asked even for negotiation. We are ready to defend ourselves as long as it takes. There are, people being killed only because President Trump wants to have fun.
Just this weekend, the war reached a new point of escalation with America's bombardment of military assets on Iran's Karg Island, a major oil hub, in response to the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz, responsible for transporting a fifth of the world's oil. But as oil prices spike due to the conflict, the people living in Iran and neighboring Gulf countries are paying the steepest price. In Tehran, residents are returning to find their homes in shambles. This woman, cleaning through the debris, says knowing the enemy is being defeated is sufficient for her, hoping her patience with the war will pay off. And in Lebanon, displaced residents take refuge in a monastery as Israel's unrelenting strikes in its pursuit of Hezbollah fighters have killed more than 800 people, as Iran landed one of its bombs in Tel Aviv. Back in the U.S., Americans are also facing the human toll of the war as families mourn the loss of the 6 service members killed in an accidental refueling plane crash in Iraq Thursday. 28-year-old Sergeant Tyler Simmons was among those killed.
He was our only child, grandchildren we won't have, him being married. And, he wanted to be married. He wanted to have children. Everything stopped. It just stopped.
In Washington, with no clear off-ramp, patience is running thin among some lawmakers.
Regime change, get rid of the enriched uranium, get rid of their missiles. Now we're in this circumstance where he's going to decide, I guess, when he feels it in his bones. And is that the criteria when we've got literally 13 service members killed?
Iran's foreign minister told CBS that some countries have reached out seeking safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. He says that is up to Iran's military, but at least 2 Indian vessels have made it across safely. Colleen?
Candice Cole in Washington. Thanks, Candice. The chair of America's Federal Communications Commission threatened to revoke broadcasters' licenses over coverage of the Iran war. Brendan Carr appeared to be following up after President Trump accused news outlets of intentionally misleading the public. Carr, who was appointed by Trump, posted on social media yesterday saying broadcasters that are running hoaxes and news distortions, also known as the fake news, have a chance now to correct course before their license renewals come up. The law is clear. Broadcasters must operate in the public interest, and they will lose their licenses if they do not. Car's threat has widely been condemned by free speech advocates. The pulling of any license would likely launch a First Amendment legal case. Israel's military claims the brother of the man who rammed his truck into a Michigan synagogue was a Hezbollah commander. U.S. authorities say Ayman Mohammed Ghazali drove his truck into Temple, Israel near Detroit on Thursday and was killed by a self-inflicted gunshot wound after exchanging fire with security guards. The Israeli military says his brother was killed in Lebanon on March 5th in a strike that also killed 3 other relatives. It's been reported the synagogue attack was an act of revenge. There are new details on Canada's plan to release nearly 24 million barrels of oil to support the International Energy Agency's efforts to increase the global oil supply. The Natural Resources Minister's office tells Global News Canada will increase oil production by around 140,000 barrels per day starting in April. It will come from already planned production increases from Alberta's oil sands. Gas prices have been soaring since the war in Iran began, and traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, a vital supply route, has been severely disrupted. In BC, prices are now above $2 a litre in Metro Vancouver.
Shock. I drove by last night at 194. I went, I think I should have fueled up last night.
The International Energy Agency wants oil-producing countries to release a total of 400 million barrels to counter the supply shortage. Prime Minister Mark Carney met with the leaders of 5 Nordic nations in Norway today. The group agreeing to work more closely with Canada on defense and trade, especially as Arctic sovereignty becomes a bigger priority for all of them. Mike Armstrong reports on the push for these nations to work more closely together as the global order becomes increasingly uncertain.
The 6 leaders never mentioned Donald Trump by name at the press conference wrapping up their summit, but it was clear the U.S. president was a major part of the discussion.
I think definitely there has been sort of a void that has to be filled when it comes to global leadership.
Oh, fantastic. Prime Minister Mark Carney met a group often called the Nordic Five, the leaders of Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. When Carney made his speech at Davos in January on middle powers working more closely together, the Nordic Five was the kind of group he was talking about. The leaders made it clear Sunday they'd heard the message and that it resonated.
The speech you gave in Davos, I have never experienced anything like this. I mean, people in Denmark, and I guess the same goes for the rest of the Nordic countries, have been talking about, they have been reading your speech.
The U.S. and Israeli war in Iran was a topic in the meeting. The leaders say they're concerned there's been an escalation, and they're disappointed in the soaring price of oil, but not necessarily surprised by either. Wars, the leader of Norway says, rarely follow a script.
Well, I think we are not part of this war. We did not initiate it, but we are all affected by it.
Now, Carney attended major NATO military exercises in northern Norway Friday. More than 30,000 soldiers from a dozen NATO countries were taking part, while Nordic leaders are pushing for tighter Arctic defense cooperation as allies respond to rising tensions with one of their Arctic neighbors.
Look, the biggest security threat, physical security threat in the Arctic is Russia.
Carney traveled Sunday from Norway to the UK. The Prime Minister meets with his British counterpart Keir Starmer Monday in London. Carney is also scheduled to have an audience with King Charles. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre has unveiled his plan to boost Canada's auto sector. The leader of the Conservatives wants to see Canada produce 2 million cars a year over the next decade. Poilievre wants to see the GST removed from Canadian-made vehicles and electric vehicle subsidies scrapped. A key part of the plan would see Canada enter a tariff-free auto pact with the United States. Poilievre says Canada's auto industry will continue to decline without tariff-free trade with the U.S.
The plan that we're putting forward allows both the United States and Canada to massively increase their production by incentivizing automakers to match a car made with a car sold. So that is how we're going to get the United States to agree to removing tariffs.
Poilievre's plan also includes banning vehicles that use Chinese or Russian-connected software. A Montreal area family is speaking out after a sophisticated scam cost a father nearly $20,000. A Pointe Claire man says someone called pretending to be his son, and the voice sounded so real he believed it. The family hopes sharing their story will help warn others. Felicia Perillo has more.
Eric Sauvageau and his son Sam are still trying to process what happened. A few weeks ago, the 60-year-old received a phone call from someone he believed was his son, and it changed everything.
I get a call with a private number from my fake son saying, I'm in the courthouse. I was in an accident. I sound a little funny because I broke my nose. But it totally sounded like Sam's voice.
Over the next 3 hours, Sauvageau says he received several more phone calls from someone pretending to be his son and another claiming to be a lawyer. He made 2 trips to the bank, withdrawing just under $19,000 in cash. He says 2 different couriers later came to his home to collect the money. It wasn't until after the second pickup that Eric called his son's workplace and realized his son was there the whole time.
It's devastating. You feel stupid. I mean, you feel like you're an idiot. And then I know the scam. I know the grandfather scam, and I'm aware of it. And I was just, it was just they play on your emotions, really.
The pair says they've been in touch with their local police station about the matter. In a statement to Global News, a spokesperson for the Montreal Police wouldn't comment on this case specifically, but they say some scam victims report voices sound like loved ones. While some suspect AI, authorities say that's hard to confirm, but they are monitoring the situation.
It was shocking, to say the least. Like, you never think it's going to be you or your dad or your grandma, grandpa, whatever, it doesn't matter. You just hear about those stories. You never think like, oh, it's going to be my parents or my grandparents.
To recoup some of the money he lost, Sauvageau says he's willing to sell some of his extensive music collection, something he spent years building. His son has started a fundraiser to avoid that and help him offset the financial hit. But they say speaking out isn't about the money. They hope that sharing their story will help others avoid a similar fate. Felicia Perillo, Global News, Montreal.
First, the price of gas, now mortgage rates. Coming up, how the war in Iran could soon impact the cost of buying a home. Plus, the latest research on long COVID and how to manage it. Since the U.S. and Israel launched their war on Iran, we've seen the price of oil spike, and the longer the conflict drags on, the more other goods will cost as inflation increases. But it's not just prices at the pump and the grocery store. Ann Gaviola explains what it could mean for mortgage rates.
More than 1 million households are set to renew their mortgage this year, according to the CMHC, Canada's national housing agency. And the Iran war, along with the changing rhetoric around it, are causing big changes to mortgage rates.
We've seen bond yields really spike up in the last few days, although it's like a roller coaster. Every tweet seems to move things.
Fixed rate mortgages are based on Canadian government bond yields, which move in lockstep with a broader bond market.
We've probably seen fixed rates go up by at least a quarter percent, kind of right across the board from all the lenders.
Investors are nervous about the spike in energy prices, even though the International Energy Agency, the IEA, is set to release a record 400 million barrels of oil reserves in an effort to stabilize crude prices.
High oil prices leads to inflation, which leads to higher prime rates, which leads to higher mortgage rates.
But reserves are limited, and if the war persists, this unprecedented emergency measure can only do so much.
Those emergency reserves are not going to last more than a few months.
Variable mortgages aren't immune. Suddenly, the potential for a rate hike or 2 from the central bank is on the table this year. If inflation gets out of hand, the Bank of Canada will need to intervene with higher rates.
When inflation heats up, central banks step in and raise rates to get people to start saving rather than spending, stop borrowing, and pay their debts down.
And that raises the cost of variable rate debt, including car loans and mortgages.
Given that cost of living and affordability issues continue to be the number one concern for many, many Canadians who don't have a buffer, those higher interest rates could push them to the brink then where they could be forced selling their home, or in order to keep their home, they might have to find even more economies in their day-to-day living.
Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Long COVID ahead years after the pandemic was declared over. Many are still suffering. Today is International Long COVID Awareness Day. 6 years ago, the pandemic was declared. It's been over now for 3 years, but not for Canadians suffering the long-term effects of the virus. Hersh Singh spoke with one of Canada's leading researchers about the wide-ranging symptoms and how to manage them.
While most of the world has moved on from COVID-19, for patients with long COVID, the fight is still on.
Someone who have had a COVID infection and have lingering symptoms. And usually we consider anything lasting longer than 3 months, but it has to be something that is substantial.
Chung says these symptoms can be similar to mild illnesses like a virus.
Fatigue, shortness of breath, a racing heart rate, and cognitive issues. The common public term is brain fog.
Their impact can be much harsher.
The severity is on a spectrum like lots of other conditions, but there are people disabled enough that they aren't able to work, and sometimes when it's really bad, they're unable to do their daily tasks.
For some, the symptoms can last for years.
Currently, the approach to long COVID is mostly management. So it's like you have these symptoms, we need to manage it so you can get through your day, basically. But we're not impacting the course of disease very much. We don't have treatments that resolve the symptoms. We don't have treatments that can fix your long COVID in a short period or a reasonable period of time.
While the research has progressed in the last 5 years, scientists are still looking for answers.
We now know that it's because of immune dysregulation, and there are certain symptomatic treatments for various symptoms, but we haven't found a cure.
March 15th in Canada and internationally is recognized as the Long COVID Awareness Day, something that researchers say is integral to keeping their research moving forward. Hersh Singh, Global News.
Next, the spirit of Ireland comes alive in Toronto. St. Patrick's Day falls on a Tuesday this year. Not an ideal day to party, so today, 2 days early, Toronto embraced everything green for the city's annual St. Patrick's Day parade. As Lexi Benedict reports, it's a celebration steeped in history.
It's a staple in Toronto every March. The sound of bagpipes, a crowd dressed in green, big smiles, and loud cheers.
Happy St. Patrick's Day!
Happy St. Patrick's Day! Toronto's St. Patrick's Day Parade has been a tradition for generations, celebrating Irish culture, diversity, music, and heritage. And while some things have changed, the Irish spirit is still the same.
The parade's been amazing. Every culture, everybody's out. It's perfect.
For more than 30 years, people have been lining these streets to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. And as you can see, decades later, that tradition is still going strong.
I love seeing the crowd. I love seeing the energy. I'm always into the music and the dance, so being able to see it in the parade, always, honestly, it just keeps me pumped.
Great day for the Irish and great way to celebrate being Irish.
Proof that while this parade may have decades of history, the excitement hasn't faded.
And it's fun! We're so happy here to watch the parade.
Any favorite floats?
I really like everything so far. I can't choose one thing.
You came with your green, so you're all ready.
I'm ready to party and ready for the parade.
A tradition Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow is proud to celebrate.
I think more and more people are coming to appreciate the Irish culture and the history it represents. It celebrates our friendship and it celebrates the joyousness of St. Patrick's Day.
And many hope it will continue for generations to come.
Because the generations that follow us, they need to know what the roots are. They need to know where they came from. And this is why they do this every year.
This is a lot of fun. I'm having a good time. It's my first parade.
Is this the start of a new tradition, perhaps?
Oh, yeah, I hope so. It's been great.
Happy St. Patrick's Day!
Lexi Benedict, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Colleen Christie. Tonight's Your Canada features farm equipment in Wrentham, Alberta. We love seeing your Canada. Please keep emailing your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.